Hello there. I was supposed to do a review of The Overview by Stephen Wilson with my friend Steve Gould. And I haven't been able to organise it. My fault. Sorry, Steve. I'm sat here thinking, what shall I do now today? I've got to get some videos filmed. And I'm very aware that, I want to be timely in this review. Everyone else has reviewed it. I wanted to be in first. I got the album early. Had a listen to it. I wanted to be in first. I was ready to go for a week. In fact, I haven't listened to it for over a week. So it's going dim in my memory. And that's actually where I want to start in terms of this review. Or not start, because I need to give you some background. So for those of you who don't know, Stephen Wilson emerged in the early 90s. And when he first emerged, and I first came across him with the band No Man, that is a duo that he had with Tim Bonus, who is a musician I worked with for the last couple of years. When I first heard it, it sounded like it was more coming out of sort of 80s and 90s sort of electronic pop music, probably David Sylvian, Japan, Brian Eno. He seemed to have come out of that world, not progressive rock. I first read about him in Wire magazine, so I associate Stephen Wilson, with that sort of, Richard Barbieri, Sylvian Fripp. It was all that type of world, which is just music that I like, but wasn't my main type of music. But I had a very early No Man recording and I enjoyed it. In 2005, when I was offered the gig with IQ, and then I asked some of my friends who were into progressive rock, said, what are you listening to at the moment? What are the progressive rock bands? And I can remember my friend mentioned two bands. He goes, he really likes Porcupine Tree and Spock's Beard. And I can remember thinking, oh my God, Porcupine Tree? That's like the worst prog day. Porcupine Tree, Spock's Beard. What the hell's happened to progressive rock? Cheesy. But those are the two bands that I were told to have a listen to. So what I did. And when I heard Porcupine Tree, I actually was pleasantly surprised. This was sort of contemporary rock music, touch of Radiohead in there, touch of Muse in there, touch of, this sort of electronic post-Japan thing was quite cool. And every now and then some heavy riffs, which was cool. Some odd time signatures. And then Gavin Harrison joined the band, who I'd been a huge fan of in the 1980s when he was writing for Rhythm magazine. And he was, he wrote a book on the ways to play weird rhythms, which I just lapped up, and that had become a signature of my playing. So it was great to hear Gavin Harrison in this band. And that was I think that's when I got the first album I actually bought, which would have been the one with Sound of Music on. Can't remember what that was called there. Anyway, followed up by Dead Wing. And Dead Wing was like the first masterpiece. Absolutely incredible. And they'd heavied up, hadn't they? And Steve Wilson was now working alongside Opeth. And there was like a metal thing in there. All the way through this, I was now playing prog. And I was very aware that Stephen Wilson seemed to be a bit down on prog. He didn't like prog. And that contradicted the fact that the guys in IQ was going, well, he used to come to IQ gigs. He seemed to be quite a heavy neo-prog and IQ fan, which he has since admitted he was. Porcupine Tree just get better and better and better, climaxing with Fear of a Blank Planet, which is one of the greatest sort of modern prog albums, modernish prog albums of all time. Absolutely incredible. And at this point, he then starts his own solo career up. And he starts to bring out various albums, like Insurgents. I never checked anything out, but I was friends back then with Marco Miniman. And I noticed that Marco was playing one of those albums, and then suddenly he brings out The Raven That Refused to Sing. And this album seems to suddenly, Stephen Wilson's expose his prog credentials. They were there all along, and not only that, he's not just channeling like Genesis or Yes. He's into King Crimson, he's into Van der Graaf's Generator, he's into the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and I thought, I've got to go and get this. It's a perfect prog album for me. It got me back into prog. At this point, I'd given up on prog. And The Raven That Refused to Sing is a work of absolute genius. It's got Alan Parsons producing it. And Alan Parsons has just gone for a normal band sound. They sound like they're in a room playing together. The band's incredible. He's got Adam Holtzman on keyboards from Miles Davis's group. You got the great Theo Travis on saxophone, giving it that sort of early King Crimson sound. It's just a monumental album. And then he's followed up with The Hand That Cannot Erase, which is equally great. And then bizarrely, through a week, and I'm watching this. This review, I'm going to go really into depth of me and Stephen Wilson. When I was doing drum clinics in the early 2000s, there was a number of drum clinicians in the UK. There was me, there was Russell Gilbrook, who now plays drums for Uriah Heep. There is the incredible Bobby Arechiga, who seems to be in a little bit of a semi-retirement now, but one of the great drummers. There was Jason Bold. Who else was on that circuit at that time? Who else? There was me. There was Craig Blundell. Now, I was signed to Meinl, and I can remember I was doing a UK tour, and Meinl brought this guy, Craig Blundell, down. Fantastic drummer. We chummed up. They said, "You want to do some clinics with him?" And he started opening up for me. And throughout the 2000s, I was quite close to Craig. When I decided to jump out of prog for my own personal reasons in 2009, I didn't necessarily put Craig forward for the Frost gig, but I think the connections, and it ended up, I'd actually originally put my friend Alex Thomas, who'd been drumming with Badly Drawn Boy and now plays for John Cale. I put him forward. But anyway, Craig took over from me, which was very interesting in Frost. And then from Frost, he got taken up. I think in the end, Craig is a better prog drummer than me. I was never really a prog drummer. I had a disdain for the style. And this is what is going to come through on this review, is this history is going to inform this review. So Craig eventually gets the gig replacing Marco Miniman in Stephen's band. Now, I can remember I went to see Stephen Wilson on the Hand Cannot Erase tour and went back to see Marco and had a chat with him then. And then I hooked up with Marco again. I haven't spoken to Marco for a long time, but I hooked up with Marco again when he was playing with Satriani. And it was at that point he said he didn't think he would be staying with Stephen Wilson. And he said, why don't you see if you could get an audition or try out? And I was initially like, I can't do that. Can't replace Marco Miniman, because what I'd seen live on stage was utterly incredible. This is the peak of prog. So I'm going to try and get that across to you. Craig took the bull by the horns, went out and he nailed it. And I don't think many drummers on the planet could have nailed it like that, especially stepping into Marco Miniman's shoes. At this point, now Stephen Wilson's he's arguably the most important progressive rock musician on the planet. And then he starts to change the thing, and he goes back to messing with the prog formula, and he starts to flirt with pop music, right? To the consternation of the progressive rock fans. I feel that the only people buying those records were progressive rock fans. And even though he did collaborate with Elton John and did all sorts of clever things, looking at how you're going to release the album and all sorts of very electro pop things coming out, and it was all very good. And then the last album I reviewed by him was the Harmony Codex, and I could see it was that pop sensibility, but he brought back a very strong progressive rock thing again, and I thought that album was very, very interesting. This year he has brought out this album called The Overview, and I think he's done something very interesting, because rather than just seeing the album as being the album, and he's been experimenting with this form for a while, there's no such thing as an album anymore. It's stupid to think about it. I know this and he knows this. So he wants to bring out this whole audio-visual experience. The only way you can truly appreciate this is to rock up to some cinema with surround sound and hear the soundtrack with the visuals, which basically explores fundamental metaphysical questions about time and space and the infinite and the finite and the void and all the sort of stuff that I love, and I love talking about on here. And there's a concept to me which I call it's the telescope concept. We are at once the centre of our universe, right in the middle of it, looking out and experiencing it. And then we are very aware that the whole of our experience is in front of us and we're in the middle of it. But what we're not aware of, it's actually going on inside our minds, and we have no idea what consciousness is. But then you can zoom out and you can see it from the outside in, of seeing we're just a speck in the universe and we're not at the centre of it. We're actually inconsequential when compared to time and space. And those two aspects seem to contradict themselves on an emotional level with us, creating some sort of angst, which I have dealt with all my life, and I'm sure Stephen Wilson has. And he wants to get across that. I think he wants to, I mean, people say it's about space, the vastness of space. I think this album is far more about the telescope. And what I mean by the telescope is we are once seeing the world through one end of the telescope and the other. You know, we are the totality of the universe, subjective to us, but in an objective view, which is the only way we can understand truth, we are nothing in terms of space or time. This is what this album tries to do. And it's got a film and accompanying it. Now, he's created 2 side-long tracks. I don't know why, because there's no sides anymore, but I suppose it'll go on vinyl nicely. 2 20-minute tracks. They contain vocals, spoken word, and full band. Craig Blundell's on their drumming. And what we have, basically, are 2 epics. Or do we? Right? These are 2 prog epics. So the prog world's gone, oh my God, Stephen Wilson has returned to progressive rock. He's returned to it. Thank God for that. But this is not the Raven that refused to sing. It's something else. This is a soundtrack to a film. And when you create a soundtrack to a film, and or to a dance or a theatre piece, which I've done in the past, you have to actually take something out. You can't bang everything in the kitchen sinking, because there has to be a space for the visual images. You know, it's like doing a mix. When you do a mix, everything's got to sit in the right place. And for it to sit there, there's certain moments when you want people to get engrossed in the visuals. And at that point, you might have some floaty ambience going on. Also, I often get this when I'm working on my own music and I'm imagining a sort of film or a soundtrack to a film. And I will go, let's take a deep breath and really get there as slowly as we can. Don't worry about the audience. Let's just let this develop, you know. And it might be a bit minimal. Some people might be able to switch off, but those who'll stick the thing will be pay off, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is, for me, the triumph and the downfall of this album. I think he does a brilliant job of exploring these as much as you can in the musical form. I'm sure they would make much more sense with the video. And everybody who's seen the video seems to be in absolute love of this album. Those who haven't are going, I'm not too sure. The progressive rock world has reacted like this. It's okay. And that's exactly how I felt. Now, I have to be honest, right? When I listened to it, production's incredible. The use of analog synths and the explorations into electronics that Stephen Wilson is very involved with is great. I felt Craig Blundell's playing and his drum sound are just unbelievable. I thought Craig is fantastic. The bringing together of Stephen Wilson's production and Craig's playing is I love the drumming on this. And I think Craig does an incredible job. And I like the fact that we seem to be, at least in this neck of the woods, leaving that sort of hyper edited and programmed approach to drumming. I can still hear it's there too, and you know, it all does sound very perfect, but it also sounds like Craig is having fun and stretching out. I feel that Stephen Wilson's there nodding along, going, I love that take, we'll go with that take, and he's doing all sorts of things in there. I absolutely love that. Playing's great, the songwriting's great, but that thing that I think is required for this music to operate correctly, this need to have space in there for the visuals to go in, hamstrings the album a little bit. So when I put it on, all the way through it, I was going, I really like this. I really like this. This is really great. This is how prog should be done. He hasn't done anything distasteful. He's doing all the right things. This is modern prog. Only Stephen Wilson can make modern prog. He hasn't gone down the prog metal route. He hasn't gone down the trying to sound like Genesis route. You know, he hasn't gone down like just Pink Floyd. You know, he has a tendency sometimes to get stuck in the dull, boring Pink Floyd world of prog, and that's where I differ from Stephen Wilson. You know, having 2 chords soaring back and forth. You know, but thank God he never sticks a Dave Gilmour guitar solo over the top of it. I've got nothing against Gilmour, but we don't need it now. We don't need other people trying to do that. I have been to 1 million prog festivals and sat through 1 million bands that have 2 names. You know, like Gandalf's Goat or bloody Elrond's Codpiece or something like that. You know, I've sat through them all while they sit, you know, go up between 2 chords in 7 and someone does this sort of twiddly blues bass, but with no real dirt guitar solo. I don't mind Gilmour doing it, but I don't need anyone else to do it. Stephen Wilson's one of the few lights in prog that does not go down there. I listened to Steve Wilson to get an idea of whether it's still worth even making prog. If he's doing something and can make something out of it, then I will carry on and try my best to do it. And this album had all that. It inspired me, but I'm shouting and you don't have to shout. I listened to it all the way through and I enjoyed it. Then I thought I should listen to it a second time, and I did, but that became a little bit of a chore. And I was going to listen to it a third time, but when I thought about that, it felt like work. I was like, I can't be arsed, don't want to do that. And so I can remember I sat down to do that, and I didn't listen to that. What album did I sit down and listen to instead? Oh, I wish I could remember. Because it'll be funny when you sat there, you got your headphones on, I'm going to listen to an album. Oh, I'm going to listen to this overview album again. I can't be arsed. Oh, let's just listen to something else. Let's have some fun. Let's have some enjoyment. And I put another album to listen to at that point. Can't remember what it was. It's probably some obscure 70s fusion album, or maybe some funk album. I wish I could remember. This is what happens when you get older. Suffice to say, I didn't want to listen to it again. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard it. Do you feel the same? It's great. He doesn't put a foot wrong. It's a prog album, but I don't want to listen to it again. And I have to ask myself why, because I have this response so often with modern albums. And I'm going to spell it out because I don't actually think it's Stephen Wilson's fault. I think it's the inability for people doing creative work at this point in culture to be able to break these sort of dogmas that we have to have. The biggest one is the perfection dogma. I hear no rough edges. This has been made in a door. That's what it sounds like. If the band are playing in the room at the same time, they've got so used to playing in an absolute perfect way that they're imitating the sound of someone who's cut together their takes in a door. Everybody's playing like that now. I don't hear any edge to it. I don't feel any danger. I don't hear any sort of real groove. I don't hear any sense of tension and release. Everything's on the clock. Everything is in the right place. And then Stephen Wilson suffers with that Pink Floyd-itis thing where he never went. It's like he feels it's distasteful to go into Top Gear. Think of the opening of Close to the Edge by Yes. Think of where they start on that album, right? Stephen Wilson's never going to go there. Not in a million years is he going to go there because he sees it as distasteful. And this is the thing, it seems to have a cultured, post-Joy Division, middle-aged view of what music should be. So that means no fast guitar solos, no showing off. If something's going to be fast, it's got to be a saxophone, probably soprano saxophone. No getting into Top Gear, no showboating, no dirt, no mistakes, no edge, nothing that is pretentious and self-indulgent. Stephen Wilson's got a phobia of that. He's a prog musician that has got a basic phobia of being accused of being pretentious, of being overindulgent, of just displaying virtuosity for virtuosity's sake. He doesn't want it to sound like he's incompetent. He wants to sound like he's a competent producer. Everything's got to sound a certain way. It's got to be a certain way. The risks that we saw in band playing in the 70s and 80s, that's gone for music. The risk that we saw in terms of production has gone. It really has gone from music. Everyone knows how to do it, but they won't do it. I'm sure that me and Stephen Wilson are both massive fans of My Life in the Bush and Ghost by Brian Eno and from Talking Heads, David Byrne. I think that's the most important album of the 1980s. I think the basic production process that we're still trapped in is established on that album. It's wonderful. When you go to the spoken word parts of this and you go to the sort of use of electronic instruments, there's a little sniff of it, but There isn't enough of it. Production-wise, it blew my mind because I realised that you can have any drum sound, you can have anything you want, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to have a song. If you just take something off a shortwave radio of someone talking, it provides a personality and a person that goes into it. The production bravery that we saw with early hip-hop and rap tracks, the production bravery we saw in punk rock, the production bravery that we saw in all this electronic music in the early 80s, the very stuff that I know that he loves, right? That has been... He wants to come across as having good taste. That's the problem with it. And I'm not interested in that anymore. I'm interested in bad taste. I want something that shakes my foundations. I want something dirty and wrong. I want, and I don't want to have to go to music that's being made like 19-year-olds to get that because I am nearly 60 years old. I think I'm the same age as people, a year younger. I don't want that. I want music that I'm totally selfish. I want something that I can listen to, that I love, that feels that is pushing the boundaries of my world, right? That's what I want. And I just wish that the modern digital... I mean, he's got access to big studios, Get some musicians in the same room. Mic them up badly. Get a load of leakage going on between the guitar and the overheads on the drums that you can't solve, so you've got to mix it in a certain way. It gives you a unique sound. Get some players in, confuse them like Miles Davis would or Bill Laswell. Get them into a situation where they don't know what the hell's going on. Get them so they unseated, they start speeding up, and then utilise the fact that they speeded up, but they didn't know where they went, or they went out of sync there, to explore something which is truly chaotic, which is truly a recording of us as human beings, because it essentially... the human being that's at the centre of this project that he's put together is not there. There is no humanity at the centre of this album, which is why I didn't want to listen to it. We need to stop this, the production, over and over again. And this is why I'm going to have to take my glasses off and even do this like this, which shows I'm exasperated. This is the international symbol of exasperation on YouTube. It's not used very well, but I am getting exasperated by this. Right, I don't review modern albums. Here I am trying to do the overview, right? I've done my best to review it. I can intellectually do that if you want. But yet again, this is another modern album that's been produced by the mainstream, music world, where the production just makes it antiseptic, dull and boring. When's someone going to bloody do something exciting? When? Why does everybody want to seem so... how much... are we just listen to the exposition of competency? How much is that all we're listening to? I sit and have these conversations with Ben Watson, and Ben Watson, he challenges me on all the bloody time because he doesn't like anything. He doesn't like all this chopsiness that I like. He doesn't like all the virtuosity. He doesn't want people to know about scales and chords. He's not interested in all my metric modulations, my high volumes, sort of stuck in the power tree over the 1960s. And he tells me all the time in his bloody emails, I don't answer him. I'm answering him here. He's got a point. Ben Watson has got a point. The only problem with what Ben's saying is if we all, got a load of people who can't play their instruments to go and plonk away, nobody actually wants to listen to that. It might be greatly enjoyable from an intellectual and an emotional level to him. So we have to balance these two things. There is an area where competency is important, but it has to be tempered by some sort of incompetency. Without that, if you go too much to the one thing, it just becomes boring. And even I think it's boring. There's a difference between Coltrane playing fast and Christian Patelli playing fast. There's a difference. There's a difference in fast. There's a difference in slow. We need to get the humanity back in it. We need to take a risk. It needs to kick up the arse because music's going. Everyone knows nobody wants to know about it anymore. This YouTube is the arse end of it. This is the last, twitch of the corpse of real music that's twitching away, Stephen Wilson is the last bit, this album's the last bit of juice that you can squeeze out the dry husk of progressive rock, probably. which, there's probably enough people who are still alive that like that full music that might buy this album, that might just about cover the costs for them to pay for the petrol to get there and back from the studio. I'm sorry this review's gone to this point. I'm sorry that this is what you've had to put up with. And I know it upsets absolutely everybody, but I do think there's another way through. And it requires everybody to stand up and go, this is me, this is what I do. Take it or leave it. And stop getting the brasso out, getting the Pro Tools brasso out and shining everything up, because every time you do that, you strip something away from it. And before you know it, your little statue has lost all its detail and it's just a big fuzzy lump that was once represented something, but it's very, very shiny. And that's what I hear. And I've used so many brilliant metaphors in this that I think I've come to the end of the video. No one else is going to say what I just say. Come on, I've hit the nail on the bloody head, haven't I, yet again? Right, and I feel like, this was worth doing. I'm glad Steve Gould didn't come along, because he would have just come in with his sort of, prog ways and telling me all about facts about the album. And I don't want to know about facts. I want to know about my opinion. And that's what you've just got. So if you appreciate my opinion, I'm even angry at the end of this YouTube video. This is proper YouTubing. You're sat in there feeling angry too. You don't even know what about. It's because I'm bloody angry. You're angry. I'm angry. And I've expressed it. And that's the key to YouTube, isn't it? That's what it's all about. And you're sat there going, yeah, Andy, yes, you're right. I don't know what you're saying, what you're right about, but I feel you with you. And if we were to, if you were here now and I could run down the middle of the street saying, progressive rock fans are mass, you'd all be behind me. We get our pitchforks and we go, where are we going, Andy? We're ready to protest. I said, you'll see. And we walk down to the recording studios, and in there would be some middle-aged anal retentive types. Go, what's this take 154 with the guitar solo? Yeah, I think we can get the last bar in that. Let's try it, put it in. I'll get that bit in time, yeah. Because if you zoom in 100 million miles, that one guitar note was a little bit out, wasn't it? And then we'll go in there and we'll go, what the hell he will think you're doing? And we'll kick the guitar out of his hand. And that big clunk, we will then get a gun to the producer's head and say, you're going to put that clunk on. He goes, I can't do it. I'm too scared to. Put the clunk on. But we didn't plan it. We didn't think it through. It's what if it's wrong? Doesn't matter if it's wrong. Just put the clunk on. I'm not going to do it. You'll have to shoot me. We're not going to shoot you because we only threaten you with a hollow threat. We're really nice, progressive English prog fans, really. We're not going to really do anything. We're just making a point. Anyway, this is all imaginary because part of Andy's review, he's gone off the edge of the thing like he always does at the end. When that happens, yeah, I've watched his channel. He does do that sometimes. Up until now, it made sense, doesn't it? I suppose when he gets on the sort of the wave of bonkersness, he can't get off. I've noticed that as well. And what points he tried to make? He's trying to make a point about modern production and how it spoils all music. Well, I do feel like that. They only pay me to put all this thing in. In the old days, I used to mic stuff up and sit there and have a, when you felt it, you'd go, that was a great take, let's go with that. But now, all I'm getting paid to is to go through bloody bass drums and cut out toms. Oh yes, cut out the toms, because there might be a bit of leakage on there. I know, dirty leakage. We need a platonic tom that exists in abstract space that could not really exist in the real world at all. I am sick of it. This is the death of music. Everyone thinks it's bloody downloading. It's not. It's because it's not compelling. The music's not compelling. In the moment in the car, I have a collection of early jungle records. This is jungle that was made 1991, and jungle's just happening. You can hear they got an Akai sampler. You can hear they haven't got a clue what they're doing, or if they haven't got what they're doing, they haven't got the skills to match up the keys of these different samples. So you get a nice jazz chord progression, and you get a soul vocal. They're in two different keys, and then the drum beats come in, and you can hear them going, how does this work? How does that work? And you know that this has all been laid down onto tape. It's a performance, even with music as programmed as early jungle, right? It's still a performance. It's got a heart, and that heart sounds dangerous to me. It sounds way past anything anybody's producing now. And very quickly, jungle just turned into drum and bass, and drum and bass is just rubbish. It does not have the danger of this. And you feel that people are making, I'm going, were people dancing to this? What function did this music have? They weren't dancing to it. They were having their minds blown by it. We've lost that. We've lost that. If you really want to prove you're competent, then work out what I'm saying and get that on the recording. That's competent. The old producers knew how to do that. And the reason is because producers wasn't there to cut things out and quantize them and put them in time. Producers were there to recognize when the vibe was right. That's what they were there for, and that's what we need. We're done. I'm had enough now. If you like this video, like. If you want to see some more, subscribe. If you want to support me, I've got a Patreon, I've got a PayPal tip jar down the end there. You know, this came out much better than I thought it would, actually. It's got all the aspects of an Andy Edwards video. I think it's great. Let's switch it off then. Bye-bye, everybody.